and welcome to Covergaming, where we go into a game, we play it, and we have some discussions over it. For today's topic, it is going to be TF2 and a wide varieties of topics over it. In the driver's seat is going to be our fair boy Rayne.
Hey there.
And we're just gonna have a good old conversation about it.
This will have more of a podcast feel to it. We're not going to focus on the game or commentate with the game exactly. We're just kind of talking about the game we're talking about. So we'll be playing TF2 today. We'll talk about TF2, kind of the history about it, and we'll kind of do that for a multitude of games. So today we're doing something I'm comfortable with, which is TF2. In the future we could do games like Civ 6 or Overwatch or just a myriad of games that we have any feelings towards. So pretty much this is kind of more relaxed. You may not be the funniest thing in the world, but it's just sort of kind of a way for us to sort of just one-on-one with you guys if you want to listen to it.
Okay. And to begin, we're going to give you a little idea of how we started with TF2. You want to go first, boy?
Yeah. So my start with TF2 was just watching YouTube, and one of my favorite YouTubers is like a top class thing where he was like, oh, this is the best class in the game. I didn't know what the game was, so watching this list, I was confused on what was going on. I was interested immediately, and I wanted to know more about it, but at the time I was so young I didn't have my own PC, so I couldn't even play it. So I just kind of watched from afar while this cool game showed up, and I was wondering, one day I can play it, and I realized it was free. I was, I really got to play it now. So for years I was a fan but never even touched it until I think 2013 I finally got around to it, and that was just a lot of fun. Oh, hello, Heavy. A lot of fun. I haven't put it down since, obviously. It's my most played game on Steam. I've almost 500 hours at this point, and I just really enjoy it.
And I actually have a similar entry. I first really found TF2 through a YouTuber who unfortunately doesn't make the same content anymore, but the YouTuber Star.
Oh, yes.
And I just always watched his late night content. I was like, this looks like such a fun game. And I never actually played that much until I actually got with a group of my friends. With one of my friends and his group from 4chan, effectively. And just kind of ended up being in that server for a long time, to the point where I was definitely a man who had a lot of time in it. Similar to you, almost over 500 hours.
Jeez.
And I always had a lot of fun there, specifically because it was the first time I was really involved in a deep internet community.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, let's continue on with the little bit more of our personal connection. What's your favorite class?
Favorite class for me is going to be Medic. You won't be seeing me play much Medic right now. Long story short, taking a little bit of a med break. As you can probably guess, play Medic's kind of a stressful thing every once in a while, so I'm just taking a break for a month or two. I'm just trying out different classes. I've been playing a lot of Pyro, actually. It's been really easy, but since this update, it's gotten a lot harder, but it was fun, easy while it lasted, up until about a week ago where they patched it and where it's not as easy anymore.
And as for me, I've always been a soldier main. It's something I've always done, specifically for one specific cosmetic. The bucket, which is the finest piece of accessory, the finest hat in all of the game.
Man,
you cannot deny this to me, and it is amazing.
There's over 1,000 cosmetics in this game, and you're going to tell me that one bucket's the best?
Exactly, and I love this thing so much, it was to the point where, I mentioned in my group before, I literally just bought a bunch of buckets on the marketplace, and just started giving them out to everyone, including you.
Yes, I do have it on my soldier right now. Oh, hello, Huntsman. Anyway. But yeah, I'm wearing it now. It's just kind of fun because, with the trading the way it is, you can sort of enjoy sharing items and stuff like that to your friends. There's a booming economy in this game, so if you want to trade and get some profit out of it, you can. But if you want to just give your friends some cool stuff like a bucket, perhaps, you can just sort of do that. And it's a lot more fun, a lot more personal.
Yeah, and the economy is something that always kind of amazed me and how intricate it honestly was.
I know a good handful of the stuff there. It gets pretty deep. There are a lot of rules to it, a lot of tricks behind it, but that's if you want to get deep into the thick of it. If you aren't too interested in being in the economy, that's fine. There's no requirement to. There's no real benefit to doing it, because at the end of the day, there's some money involved, but it's more or less for the cosmetics, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so let's move forward to a little bit of history. This game came out when exactly, Mr.
I believe it was October 10th, 2007.
So it's 11 years old.
Almost.
Yeah, it just got into double digits and is still very annoying.
What is this game in a nutshell is annoying?
I'm just saying, in comparison to the child it would be.
Yeah, it's definitely not the spring chicken it once was. Oh, okay.
Oh, by no means. And I actually got in there, I think around the 13-ish area,
Yeah.
so I got to see a good chunk of the growth.
Yeah, I don't know, like, it was weird. 2007, 2010, it was a game people played, but I think turn of the decade, it just got crazy popular.
Yeah, I think the main reason was when they made the turn to free to play.
Probably. The free-to-play change probably just helped them out a bunch. And,
Also, the pure fact of it was one of the first games that I can think of, especially free to play, to include these great animations for all the characters.
yes, the Meet the videos are still amazing. It's been a while, honestly, but they're still really fun.
Yeah,
And they still made a few, too. That's the weird part. They did the video for the Jungle Inferno update last year, and it was still pretty good.
Exactly. That's why something I'm actually really sad that Valve doesn't do enough more of, especially when it comes to TF2, is more animations with these characters, because all of them are gold.
Well, if we
And
talk
meme
about,
gold mines, might I add.
Exactly, without a doubt, but that's kind of getting to how Valve works, and long story short, if Valve doesn't want to, it'll never happen. It kind of sucks, but they put what they want over what the customers want, which makes sense to a point, but make a long story short, if they wanted to, they could make this game a lot more popular, but they're not going to. And that kind of sucks, but oh well.
But yeah, so, and the other interesting thing is, I think TF2 is easily a game that I was always amused by the fact that they were very stern in the point of they kept to their status of characters. They never added more characters like lots of the other games that they do
Shooters,
today.
MOBAs, they always add new content. But with TF2, they just had new weapons. These new weapons would foster new playstyles, like Demo Night, or I think Flank Power is getting bigger and bigger now thanks to that new jetpack. But they would never, like you said, really add new characters. They were very proud and very confident with what they had.
Yeah, because it was honestly very well balanced in the amount of what they had. Anymore, probably would have thrown everything out of Turbine. I mean, even when it comes to weapons, they're kind of a little low on that, because I recall there was a long streak of just the only things that they were updating were just more hats and more cosmetics.
Yeah, that was a while, up until the Jungle Inferno update, they actually made weapons finally, but for a long time there was nothing really new to play with, quote-unquote. There were new, like, promotional items, like the machete you saw there. It was for the Sky F5 PC if you had it, but they never really changed all that much. And there have been videos on this in the past from other people pretty much saying, if we make one class do something new, that could potentially take the job of another class. Like, if they made Pyro faster, then what's the Scout for? If they made Scout stronger, then what's Soldier for? You know, it's a really weird balance.
True, but again, they were always fairly good when it came to the various with various other weapon types for the initials. That was around the initial times. I can only wonder what stopped them from just making more weapons like that. For like example, there's certain classes just do not have the weapon variety as some of others. Like for example,
right
Scout
now.
has so many choices
Yeah.
compared to say Heavy. Yeah,
You got nothing. If you're not doing a certain, like, you're not doing the stock sandwich, the groove, and all that jazz, you're just kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, when it comes to Heavy, good point. There's not really that much variety in your weapon choice.
It really is more or less the sandwich, like for the secondaries. If you don't have the sandwich or the banana, you're kind of picking almost a selfish decision, because going for a shotgun is saying, no, I don't want to heal my teammates, I want to get kills, which is understandable, but people just assume you have the sandwich now. It's such a common, loved item that if you don't have it, they kind of just say, what are you doing? But of course, that's hoped to be fixed in the Heavy update, hopefully this year. We'll see. They're doing really well all of a sudden now. They've been very well in communicating as of late. They know that what they have isn't a new game or an amazing game, really, but they want to kind of keep the community that's still here kind of at least knowing what's happening. They're not as quiet as they used to be.
Yeah, because I remember there was like a long bit of just radio silence from Valve when it comes to this game.
that was a lot of their games. They were very, I guess as a company, they were very quiet in regards to handling, like, oh, do we tell them about this or that? They would just only let you know if it was like a game convention or something. They didn't really try to make any splashes besides there being cameras or something like that.
But yeah, and one final thing I want to get at with the history bit is the events that, specifically the Halloween events,
Yes.
that were
Fortress.
always amazing with this game.
That's always a fun time. Now, when they added Marasmus, that was pretty much like the big moment. Like,
Yeah.
okay, here's a character you can look forward to every year. He's really funny. He's a really good time. Voiced by Nolan North. I don't know how they afforded him, but whatever. It's Steam. They got money.
Yeah, they have a lot of money. That's honestly why they probably don't do as much, because they honestly don't have to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I always appreciated. Since I have actually been away from the game, I don't know if the more recent Halloweens have been as fun as some of the past stuff, but
Well, they've been serviceable, to put it lightly.
the
It's nothing horribly new or amazing, but they're doing stuff still.
but yeah, to date my time of leaving TF2, the last Halloween I had was Ducks.
Ah, yes, 2013.
Yes, the bumper card duck
The
thing.
bonus ducks, the duck journal. The
Bonus Ducks.
end of the line update. A lot of people left after that one because they had this really amazing, Valve-made animation. Everyone was so excited. Like, this has got to be awesome. If the update's half as good as the animation was, it's going to be the best update ever. But it ended up being a not very well-supported update. Actually, it's a community update, first off, so it didn't have much of Valve's input. And Valve didn't do super well in explaining that, so people were assuming it was a new Valve update, and then when it came out that, it's community-based, and it's got ducks, people were not very happy. They felt kind of lied to, actually. They were like, well, this animation says one thing, but I'm seeing another. Why is that? And a lot of people just chose to leave afterwards.
Especially, that was the point when Overwatch was specifically starting to pull up and show up.
Some of the names, like they were tossing around the idea of Blizzard making a TF2 clone at that point. And they're like, well, that sounds really nice. But that, of course, wouldn't be a thing till 2016. It's about 3 more years. But I wouldn't be shocked if Overwatch had how much hype beforehand anyway. It was,
Oh yeah, I remember, because the first not to get too off track, but the
fine.
first Overwatch trailer was pretty damn good.
Okay, here's the weird thing. When it comes to Overwatch, I knew nothing about it whatsoever until, like, early 2016, right before it released, because in this game, I died to a guy who was called Overwatch Hype. And I had no idea what that was. Like, wait, what are we hyping over? What's this? So then I did some research, and I was like, oh, this is just a TF2 clone. What is this all about? But it actually is fun and different enough to where I can enjoy both games, thank goodness. But that didn't seem to be the way when it first came out there. Everyone was so one camp or the other initially. They were like, oh, you either do TF2 or you either do Overwatch. But that's a story for a different day, obviously.
Oh yes, definitely. And now that we're kind of over the more historic stuff, let's talk about some of the very much good that this game did. How it is good. Some positivity in this little lace.
As mentioned earlier, it was just, it had the design of every class being useful. Any situation, you could use any single class. Unlike a lot of games currently, especially Overwatch, for example, you can't pick every character for every situation. There'll be times in matches with certain games where, like, I would like to have this character, but it wouldn't be as effective as this one. Now, that is not an issue in TF2. As you see in this match here, we could have 4 scouts, 7 spies. It doesn't matter. We could still technically win. A win is possible with almost any team comp.
And speaking of pure character design, every single one of these characters are visually distinct.
Yeah.
If you put them if you just looked at them, you can just tell what this person does and their general personality. Like for example, the spy who's in front of us, he is a man in a suit. He is your general thought of a spy, someone who's stealthing around.
And I will say this, too. What also made TF2 a big thing back when it first came out in 2007 was that was right in the thick of, Call of Duty's heyday. Sort of being the one-man soldier to, win the game and rule the land and just be the general badass by yourself. This game was asking players to do the opposite. Don't think of yourself, don't think of your kill streaks. Focus on helping the team and getting points through, like, teamwork.
And that's something I always appreciated with this game, because I was never really that much for Call of Duty for the most part. I was always very much a team-based player, because honestly, as someone who isn't as good as aiming and shit like that, this makes you feel like you're doing something, and it gives someone who's really not as good a feeling of accomplishment because you're helping your team move forward, and if you're not And if you are dying a lot, that's not hindering your team as much as it would, say, in a team deathmatch situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of points should go to TF2 for doing that because, like I said earlier, they were the game to do it. You know, they were the biggest deal. And at the game, when it was first came out and it still cost money, it was only $20. I mean, it wasn't a lot of money back then. You could just put some money down and play it. It was Valve-based, and at that time, Valve was seen as, like, the god of gaming because Half-Life, you know?
Yeah, even still, some of it, actually, the way most people bought it wasn't even on its own. It was in the orange box with a bunch of other games.
Yep. Everyone's so excited because they're like, oh, I get to play Portal. You know, that was the big drawing point, was I get to finally play Portal. Because everyone saw it and was like, this game is so freaky. You know, how is this working? How is that working? Where did that spy go? Anyway. But they were like, oh, not only do I get Portal, thank goodness, but I also get 2 other games I never heard of. You get, you know, Half-Life if you hadn't played it at that point, which I don't know how many there were at that point who didn't play Half-Life. But if you hadn't, that's your first time doing it. And second off, you could play TF2, and that was a weird game because no one ever really heard of TF1. You know, at least it wasn't as popular as this one is.
Yeah,
Obviously.
it was basically a Quake mod for all those old people who remember Quake.
Yep, Quake and Counter-Strike. Well, Counter-Strike's also a Quake mod, honestly. But so the TF1 was a solid game, but when they went to TF2, they had a very different idea in mind. I'm pretty sure people have seen, you know, the beta, how TF2 was initially just a regular shooter that had, like, the, you know, Half-Life 2 engine. It really wasn't all that spectacular.
It looked very real life, like, at least as real life as you could with graphics back in the day.
Yeah, 2004 real life, so don't get your hopes up or anything. But, with that being the case, I mean, they were like, you know what, this is not going to look good in a few years. Let's just go for something a little more timeless, I guess. So they went to a more cartoonish style, and while initially it seemed a bit strange, obviously, as you can tell, it still works today, and it's obviously paid off immensely.
And honestly, and through having more interesting characters, it has endured in the pure case of always having someone who's interested in these characters. The point I'd like to push out is the comics, which are so good.
Yes, the comics now, you may not have heard of the comics recently because there's been just so few updates from them, but Valve actually helps create comics based on these characters and situations, and they've been doing quite well. Now, there wasn't a comic for a long time there. Pretty much, I think for a full year between issue 4 and 5, if I had the numbers right. But, you know, they were used recently. We haven't heard anything about the comics since then, but it looks like they're going to be ending soon. But if you take the time just to read through them, they are hilarious.
Yes, and it also gives a very good representation of the lore of these characters. Basically, when it comes to the comics, it kind of filled up the need I had from not having any more of the animations as much.
Yeah.
Getting to see these characters interact, specifically from, like, the bread, specifically like what I got from Expiration Date.
Yes.
Because that was literally that was the best video of all of them, because it literally felt like a pilot for a TV show that I wanted desperately.
Yeah, well, that actually, little side note, there was going to be a TV show on Adult Swim, but it fell through. Valve didn't want to, then Valve wanted to, then Valve didn't want to. It's still weird, but it never happened, sadly.
But yeah, there's one final thing I really want to push out when it comes to the positives of this game, and that is Valve's, basically okayness with just letting the community create with this game.
Yes. They had open source filmmaker, and you could just make horrible, dumb things, I'm sure.
And they made rewards for it, which is the best. Mm-hmm. And the amusing thing is, they get your own little melee weapon if you won. You can hit people with an Oscar-type statue, the Saxy.
You win the Saxy. They actually had the Saxys last month for this year.
Really? It was any good?
They haven't decided the winners yet. There were actually so many good parts this year. No one knows who's going to win. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
everybody brought their A game.
Yeah, was always one of the things that really got me. There was a lot of beautiful stuff. One that specifically comes to mind was the one with Medic, and do you know the one I'm talking about?
Medic. I know Zero to Hero, but that's Soldier.
No, I'm talking about the one where it's like he's like shooting up with the thing and fighting himself. Like,
I hadn't seen that one, no. Pretty good, though, yeah?
But yeah, just in general, when it comes to the creation from the community, was always very tight, very good. Mm-hmm. When it came to what they gave us, as well as the point of making the official community content with the cosmetics.
Yes, all the community updates that have all the new cosmetics made by the community, which is pretty much more or less normal now, even for normal Valve updates. Valve now makes very few things when it comes to a new Valve update. Like, I think what they made last time was just, like, 1 or 2 cosmetics on top of one map. and that was it. And you know what? That's okay. Honestly, people have been asking for TF2 just to give the community the game for a few years now. They're like, hey, obviously for you guys, this is kind of a strain. Would it be easier if we just took it? You know, I kind
That's
of agree
honestly
with that.
the way I feel, because most of the new maps are made by community members, from what I've seen.
Oh, Pyro, get the sandwich. Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much what mostly happens now when it comes to new content in this game. It's mostly just from the, sorry, buddy, from the community there. But you know, I mean, they do pretty good. Obviously, the community is not always a home run all the time, but more often than not, kind of like any game developer, some are amazing and some aren't so great. But you know, that's what happens.
If there's one thing you can appreciate, is just you can think of all the game companies that hold that basically don't want the fans anywhere near it, that just kind of say this is our thing.
Yeah, if you touch it or upload it, you'll get sued and all that jazz.
And stuff like that. But TF2 was never like that. They were always the uncle who wanted you, like, hey, I don't care if you draw on my wall as long as you're being creative about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but I gotta applaud them too, because with the Source Filmmaker, it was crazy because they gave a lot of people who were only interested in animating a tool that, while not free, had a very low entry barrier, and a lot of people have actually since then realized what they want to do and really enjoy what they're doing. So I gotta give them credit for at least letting people discover what they want to do when it comes to a passion of theirs.
Okay. And moving on from the more positive to the more negative thoughts,
man.
specifically how TF2 came from this juggernaut of a game down to, well, where it is now.
Yeah, and that's the funny part. You say where it is now, and people will debate kind of what that means. It's like, well, it's not like a garbage game per se. There are other games that are doing better, but it's still a really fun game, so no one really can agree on it. Is it a bad game now? Is it not as good as it once was, but still decent? Or is it still just as good as it once was? No one really knows.
Honestly, I'd say it's still a good game in itself, but it's dropped far from grace from where it once was, in my opinion.
It was, the game to have on PC.
And easily the main thing that led to that was their lack of reaction on anything.
Yep.
They just kind of let it sit, expecting just to stay on top of the pedestal, but eventually they just kind of got nudged off slowly, and when they realized they were falling, it was a bit late, honestly.
Kind of like what we mentioned earlier with how Valve likes to operate. For those who don't know, Valve operates on the fact that if you don't want to make it, we won't force you. So if you work at Valve, and let's say you're initially put on to work on TF2, if you're like, no, I want to do VR instead, they'll let you work on VR. You're not required to make a certain thing. They want you to make something, though. That's what they have for certain. You have to make something, but they're not sure, whatever you want to do. So a lot of the people who work at Valve went from being interested in working on TF2 to doing other projects, helping out with Steam or operating VR for them. Currently, that's the big thing, is the VR. Now they're developing Artifact, the Dota card game. So a lot of their work is spread thin, and this game just kind of got shoved underneath the rest because it's just not the hip, new, cool thing that it once was. And the developers want to do the cool stuff. What would you rather work on? A game that's 10 years old that people kind of play but not really? Or, be one of the forefronting developers for VR being more and more realistic in real life? It's like, obviously there's no choice there. You'd rather go with the emerging technology rather than tying yourself to an old game.
Exactly, and the other thing with that is they never really evolved into the competitive landscape that was shooters of any way, especially when it came to when Overwatch came out. They just kind of sat around just like, what? We don't need to do anything.
Yeah, their parents were so down. They were like, no, we're fine. Like, do you guys really think you're fine? Because look where you're at right now. They hadn't realized kind of where they were exactly. They were a little too confident. And like I said, no one wanted to work on it. And they said, oh, it'll be fine. It's still a free game. That'll get the people going in. And people still come because it's free. But they're finding out it's not as competitive as it used to be. I think the only market where this game is kind of serious, quote-unquote, is the European market. I'm not sure as to why, but this game has a lot of European fans. I don't know what exactly, I'm probably just all the nationalities in Europe, or at least most of them in Europe, are in this game, so it's kind of more fun for them. But compared to American markets, believe it or not, this is a big deal here in Europe. I don't know, again, why that is, but they really seem to enjoy it. And a lot of the pros are from Europe, so good for them.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I was always curious about. I've never seen Valve really care too much about the about a esports scene. I always figured that TF2 could be really fun for an esports type game. That's something I honestly would have loved to watch when I was really into it. I was like, I want to be able to watch some people who are better than me so I can learn.
Exactly.
And there wasn't really any source to do such a thing.
No, you had to go to the independent events, kind of like I-61, I-62. Those are over in Europe. And they're pretty fun to watch. You see the pros, they're doing sixes. It's a good time. But I think Valve was more focused when it came to competitive games on Dota. That, to them, Dota and CSGO, that's where the money is. That's where it's going to stay. And as you can tell, their competitive markets are doing quite well. At least CSGO is. I don't know. I haven't looked really much
Dota,
into Dota.
it's okay, but when it comes to the esports market, the two current kings are the LCS and the Overwatch League.
I'm surprised Overwatch League is doing so well.
Yeah, it's doing pretty well. It's in its first season, and it's always at the top of Twitch.
Well, yeah, the initial hype's still there.
I mean, especially when it comes to streaming, there is not a lot of space when it comes to TF2 anymore. I believe you once told me that if you only had like maybe 100 viewers, you can be at the top of TF2 and Twitch.
Well, the thing is, because I think a year or two ago, this game actually promotes like streamers on the front page of this game on the main menu. So if you're streaming this game and you have enough like viewers on Twitch, I think you can click a menu on here to see who's streaming it. So if you have like the most streamers of this, you may have like 3 sometimes because so many people are actually streaming it. But that's kind of just the thing they do. They're just trying to help kind of get the name out there. Like, hey, if you like to watch streams, we do. People stream this game sometimes, not very often compared to like Hearthstone or Overwatch, but it still has a scene, quote unquote. Like somebody is streaming it.
Yeah, as I said, honestly, if they struck while the iron was hot, while this game was still at its best, I think it could have had a very good esports scene.
Oh, definitely. The way it operates? Come on, buddy.
Because it's not like other multiplayer games, because you can have it's similar to Overwatch in the fact there's clear people who they are and what they do.
Yep.
And it's the game that's simple enough to pick up, but there's enough depth in there to appreciate the deeper strategy if, like, say, a pro is playing.
Oh, yeah. All the tricks, trimping, rocket jumping, all that jazz. There are many, many different strategies you can use if you're good at the game. If you don't know, it's still a lot of fun, and there's a lot of fun to learn. A lot of people are kind of like embarrassed when they have to kind of discover some stuff in games, but TF2 has always had a environment where you might get laughed at in the beginning, but it's also kind of like, oh, it's a little baby, how cute. You want to help them learn.
Yeah, honestly, out of the online games that I have played, I have never really had too much of a toxic situation with TF2, honestly.
No. I think I've only had one, and that was like last week. Like, this game, it has no toxicity. Like, you can get mad at this game, but you're not going to get, like, actually pissed off like you would for like a MOBA or like legitimate like competitive mode in a game. Like, this game is very, very just do what you want, don't let it stop you.
Which that comes down to the other major fact that Valve just kind of dropped on is the fact that they probably should have had a competitive mode a lot sooner than they did.
Oh yeah, totally. I can totally agree to that, because they did nothing for so long, and it got so annoying that the community just made them themselves. They made NGE, they made, I forget the names of the other ones, but they made their own leagues, they made their own everything, because they were like, well, Valve's not going to do it, I want to make it, so they'll make it.
Yeah, because honestly, there is nothing that feels better than knowing that you're doing well. I mean, Valve seems to understand that a decent amount with the way they did the naming weapons and kill streaks and all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But they never really did anything when it came to promoting individual skill and that sort of thing.
No, they would not.
And well, it comes to matchmaking, that's something I've never seen them really focus on before.
The Meet Your Match update?
Before the competitive stuff came in,
Yeah.
and that was a whole thing in itself.
That was a mess. Hey, we won. Cool. Yeah, that was pretty much a big problem on day one. Yeah, everyone's excited, and it was really weird because like they had people do a beta, and the beta went really well. Like, there were no issues, balancing was perfect, like nothing was wrong with it whatsoever. So when it actually was released, and it was the glitchy, incorrect, wrong mess that it was, everyone was just confused because like they did the beta. They asked for feedback. everybody gave feedback, but then all that feedback was just kind of ignored. Like, we never got a reason as to why that was either. Like, no one knows why they didn't listen to the players, but they just didn't. I think it just kind of personifies Valve's problem. Like, literally, people are saying, here's what we want to make this game better and last longer, and Valve literally turns a blind eye or a deaf ear to it.
But, yeah, so let's move on to our final thoughts. What we currently think of the game. You started for how you began, so I'll start this time.
All right.
I look back at TF2 like a far gone summer with nostalgia and joy of what it was. And when I go back to that summer, it's just kind of when I actually go back to the place I went that summer, it's just like everything isn't quite as good. Everything is
the magic's kind of gone.
The memory will always be better than what it currently became. Granted, I'll jump on and have a little bit of fun, but honestly, it's just not the same game that I put so many hours in, and I just can't get the same enjoyment out of it.
That's understandable. That just happens sometimes, though. I think for me, I care about this game too much. I'm not gonna leave it anytime soon. I don't know. It just works. It's a game you can pick up, play, not get mad, and have fun. That's really all I could ask for any game in particular, let alone it's TF2 or whatever it ends up being. And I still love it. Now, am I as story-eyed as I once was? That's a no. I understand this game has flaws. I'm not going to ignore those flaws. But I still think that at the end of the day, the base that this game is built on is good enough to, no matter how bad it quote-unquote will get, I think that it's still going to be serviceable. And as long as it still runs and there are still servers, I see myself playing it.
Okay, so that was a good time. Anyone who wants to give their own personal opinions on the state of TF2, feel free to go talk in the comments.
Yep.
And that was a good conversation, good gaming, and as always, good convergaming.
There you go. Are you proud of your new little outro?
Yes, I am.
I hope you are.
So, I'm Serene.
I'm Rayne.
And we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
That was good.